How's it going, guys and gals? My name is DividableHalo HD. Welcome back to another YouTuber interview. Today I am joined by Ian from Halo Canon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, and I must admit, I've been reading your name as DrivableHalo until now.
Drivable.
Yeah. So I was gonna get that out there. So,
All right. I haven't actually looked at it that way. But, all right.
it's like minor dyslexia kind of thing. So it's like a mix words around. So
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I've heard divisible, but I've never heard drivable.
I don't know. Somehow the I turned into an R, and yeah, shit went down.
All right. So for today's interview, we're going to be asking you a few questions about your YouTube career and kind of some questions about the Halo community and the Halo YouTube community. So are you kind of ready for this?
Absolutely.
All right. So for the first question that I have for you is, when did you first start playing Halo?
First started playing probably somewhere about early it was right after Halo 2 launched, and I remember it was winter, so I usually like to say like January of 2005. I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate, but I just remember my first actual contact with Halo. I found a Halo 2 trailer, and it was I don't it was one of the better ones. It's like it starts with, "We ran from them, they followed." So I'm sure somebody's going to know which one that is. It was a really good one, but found it, fell in love with it. Eventually, I asked a friend of mine, "Hey, have you heard of this thing? It's like Halo or something." It's like, "Yeah." Pulls it out. We start playing, and 5 minutes later, I'm killing him on the bridge of Metropolis with a tank. So
Awesome. So when did you first kind of start getting into doing YouTube videos in general, like, mainly directed to Halo?
that is an excellent question. I want to say probably around 2009, maybe 2008. It's somewhere in there. But it started out with a channel that was called The Riz, and friends did some really, really bad Halo machinima, which is still out there if you ever want something to cringe to.
All right. So when did you kind of first start moving to your main channel, what you're known for today?
That, I believe, was 2, maybe 3 years ago now. I have terrible memory, so I can't always keep track. But yeah, it's just 2 or 3 years ago, I finally got the motivation together to say, you know what, I should do a Halo channel that focuses entirely on the story and lore.
All right. So I'm guessing that's kind of what got you to pick your name, why you chose Halo Canon, right?
Yeah, I was trying to pick a name, wanted something that sounded unique, and I don't remember exactly what led me to the word canon as opposed to something like Halo lore,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there you go. It just became Halo Canon. I think it was like this temporary name. It was like, I want to do something that's about the canon of Halo, and I can't think of a name, so fuck it, Halo Canon. I just want to get this started.
All right. So what kind of series did you kind of start off with first?
So my very first piece of content was a review of Halo: The Thursday War, and a lot of those early ones were either they were like pseudo reviews. Like after that, I think I did kind of a catch up review of Forward Unto Dawn. So actually, yeah, that must have been 2012, not 2013. It's not so like 4 years ago. But yeah, so I did like a catch up review of Forward Unto Dawn. It was about the same weekend that the Scanned trailer came out. That is my mom calling. I'll call that back. Anyway, so it was about the same time the Scanned trailer came up. So I just did this mega review of like Scanned in the first 2 or 3 episodes of Forward Unto Dawn. And so a lot of it early on was just these reviews. And then I disappeared for about 6, 7 months before coming back with probably my most watched video to date, the Halo Reach timeline.
All right. And what kind of got you into the lore of Halo in general?
So after my friend showed me Halo 2 and I got addicted to betrayal killing, uh, I started, eventually started like actually taking the campaign seriously and really getting into it. But my parents were pretty against having video games in the house. To pretty much, at least back in my day, it was like typical enough for like, oh, you'll be distracted, so can't focus on your homework, so no video games. So I always had to play through others. But so there's my phone again. So, but so I ended up talking to some other friends later, some years later about Halo would keep coming up because I loved playing with my friend with certain friends, and then I talk about with other friends. And another friend said, "Hey, there's some books about this. Would you like to borrow them?" It's like, wait a minute, there's books about this? Yes, please. Long story short, he started lending me books, and I got into. That's how I got into the lore. Never looked back.
All right. For your YouTube channel, what are your more favorite series that you've done? Like the most interesting and kind of video series that like really you were in depth with?
Well, definitely the most in depth one for like a very brief time. I like doing. I only did a couple of them, but timelines. So I did like the Fall of Reach timeline, which is the one I still get a lot of views on, which I'm very happy about. Just that it was so well received overall. And then I did a Forerunner timeline, which I screwed up majorly on because I talk so fast that nobody could understand me. If you if you couldn't catch if you could or couldn't catch that, never mind that it was back in the early days when I still kind of slurred my words pretty severe. Not slurred, but I wasn't very adept at speaking and enunciating. So it's something I'd love to do again, but that's definitely one of my favorites. And then after that would be the Let's Lores, which yeah, the idea at least originally was to do a lot, to play the game, do a Let's Play, but have lore-driven discussions. It doesn't always work out that way, but they're still a lot of fun because I get to game with some fellow Halo nerds and talk with them. So yeah.
So, over the years of kind of doing lore videos, have you learned a ton of new things about Halo?
I'd say so, yeah. As probably the best thing about this is whenever comments will come in, and there'll be minor corrections that I might have gotten wrong or misinterpreted. Like I think one I love recently with Halo 5 is there's that line from Buck where he says to, or where Locke says to Buck, "You're not the only one here because of him." And I originally interpreted that as Locke, talking about them two being inspired to be Spartans because of the Master Chief, which is wrong. But as many people have pointed out, and I've come to accept, Locke was talking, "Oh, the Master Chief saved the galaxy, so we're literally alive because of him." So, it's great it's just another great way to get a ton of new perspectives or different perspectives on the lore that I might not have been exposed to otherwise.
All right. So let's pull out the question. Sorry, my mind kind of just had a blank fart. But
Of those.
yeah. So there have been some games in the Halo timeline that kind of don't fall in with the canon. Is there any games you would like to speak of, or any games you would think that don't kind of flow together with the canon of Halo?
I can't think of any that directly actually like have huge issues. I mean, Halo Wars technically because you encounter all these Covenant species that at that time had the canon was already pretty muddy by the time Halo Wars came out, but Fall of Reach when originally printed stated that hunters and elites and brutes weren't encountered until 2552, and Halo Wars directly contradicts that. But of course, at the time, a few other pieces of lore had contradicted that as well, so it wasn't a huge issue. I guess Spartan Strike, the second of those Spartan mobile games, has a couple issues, but it's also a simulation, so it's pretty easy to just say, you know what, it's a simulation, so you can explain. Yeah, it's kind of like the a wizard did it kind of excuse for Halo.
Now, people have also said that one of the most beloved games, Halo Reach, the campaign doesn't necessarily follow the canon either.
That's another example. Yeah, so for me, it is true, and there are even like my own Halo Reach timeline, which many people have said, and helps clear up a lot of the. I'm trying to think of the words here, but the issues between the books and the game. Even then, there are some retcons in there, and it's pretty clear that Bungie did kind of mean as a retcon. There's definitely points where they respect the original lore in the book, but they also freely, played around with it. So the best example of that is the Pillar of Autumn being on the ground. Now that goes directly against everything we read in Fall of Reach, and that would be an example of just a direct retcon. So not much you can do.
All right, and one thing that I heard too is the actual whole Noble team isn't really supposed to, or it doesn't really flow with the canon at all.
Yeah, they would be a major retcon too, because the original thing with the Spartan threes, besides the fact that Noble Team has Mjolnir, and a big thing with the Spartan threes was they when they were created, they were given this spy armor, which was infinitely cheaper. Not to say that they couldn't use Mjolnir. I just want to point out for any of your viewers that was never stated in the canon. Just that they didn't want to give them Mjolnir because it cost as much as a destroyer. But so originally, when the Spartans of each class of Spartan 3, they would go on a huge suicide mission that would wipe out that class. All 300 Spartan 3s of Alpha Company got wiped out. All 300 of Beta Company, except for Tom and Lucy, got wiped out. Now, again, it's another example of a retcon. There was actually a piece of media out there. It's still available on the Bungie site, though it's the easiest way to find it would be to go to the Noble Team page on like Halopedia or Halo Nation and then find their link to Bungie that tells about how Curtin Mendez pulled these Spartans out of their respective classes either right before the suicide missions or immediately after training for special projects such as the Headhunters or eventually Noble Team. So... it's one of those things, like, that's a retcon I personally don't mind, because I like the existence of Noble Team, because it's cool to see Spartan 3s kind of get to be badass.
All right. For the next question, there has been pretty much two developers on the Halo games, obviously 343 and Bungie. However, some people say that 343 has kind of dived in more into the lore of Halo, while Bungie kind of just focuses on like the person, like Master Chief himself. In your opinion, which developer kind of does the canon better?
That is a very difficult question, because like even the Bungie era lore, the books that came out, the comics that came out, with the exception of the Halo graphic novel and Halo Contact Harvest, both of which had direct Bungie involvement, the rest of the books and all that media that came out, that was done by the Halo franchise team, which would eventually evolve into 343 Industries. So if we're talking strictly games, I mean, 343 acknowledges the expanded lore much more than Bungie ever did. But on the other hand, of course, Bungie didn't confuse people by including all that lore. So you can kind of go back and forth on how you feel about that.
All right. So with Halo 4, a lot of people said that they disliked the game, or the campaign mainly, and a great chunk of people also said they liked the game. Do you believe it has to do with the lore, people that pretty much knew the Halo universe, know Halo lore, and people that don't know the Halo lore necessarily?
I definitely think some of it came from that. There was obviously plenty of people that didn't like the gameplay. Excuse me. And that was also a contributor. But speaking strictly on lore, there were definitely some things that 343 needed to explain better, and just didn't.
All right. So, what is your opinion on the Halo 5 game?
In a word, complicated. So, like we were talking about with Halo 4, like, gameplay was definitely one of the issues in there. With Halo 5, I absolutely love the gameplay. And like, the environments are fun. It's a lot of fun to play. I don't have as much fun playing with Halo 4, but Halo 4's got the far superior story. With Halo 5, the story is just, it's all over the place. It's a very mixed bag. There's good points, but there's a lot of really questionable points. They killed Julim Dama in a cutscene of all things. They drop the Janisky and Absolute Records story arcs. I mean, if you pick up Halo 5 with the second mission, you're pretty much where Halo 4 ended. Yeah, other than the fact that there's suddenly three new Spartans showing up out of nowhere if you haven't read the expanded lore. And I don't really find the shortchanging of Blue Team that big of an issue, but I mean, it is their first game, and they barely touch on them most of the time. And then I'm still like really torn on Cortana coming back.
Yeah. So, do you kind of think that one of the big problems is people couldn't really kind of experience what these characters were like? They kind of couldn't connect to some of these characters, such as the people that were part of Osiris Team, and if people were not familiar with the canon, Blue Team as well.
I think Blue Team was probably would have been the bigger issue, considering for one thing, their characters are very withdrawn. So it doesn't really lend itself well to a video game setting unless you have some knowledge of these characters. Osiris, in my personal opinion, I found Osiris to be very. I liked Osiris a lot. They were open. They talked a lot, especially about their own pasts. Tanaka was instrumental on the Meridian levels, just as Vale was instrumental on the Sanghelios levels, and Buck was just a riot. So, like the worst thing I could say about any of them was Locke was, was basically just a Boy Scout for the most part. But even then, I still enjoyed him, though I've heard different opinions. So,
all right. Do you believe that people kind of hated or disliked Halo 5's campaign mainly because you didn't get enough time as playing as the Master Chief and Blue Team?
I do think so. I think, at the very least, that's a huge contributor. Because it's one of the big ones I've heard among so many others, and the fact that a lot of the same people perceived Osiris as being boring to play with, notably Locke. So,
yeah. All right. So with Halo 5, kind of, I think there was like, oh, sorry, I'm just messing up here, but like for Halo 5, one of the biggest things that they were doing is they were like kind of hyping up like the whole thing between Locke versus Chief, and then when you actually get the game, there's like one puny little fight. So what do you believe was the problem here, or what went on really?
At best, I think they might have hyped it up too much, but as I've discovered over time, I seem to have had a very different expectation about what we were going to get, which is pretty much what we got. The closest thing I could say to like misleading advertising, at least in my own opinion, were the cost and the all hail trailers, which kind of teased this direct almost hostile confrontation between these Spartans. But personally, I never thought that was going to happen. I think I probably said that a few times, either in videos or online, but I equated that more with Hunt the Truth than Halo 5. So,
all right. So we're gonna kind of move on to maybe multiplayer. Sure. What is your opinion on multiplayer? Did they do anything wrong, and what did you enjoy from the multiplayer?
Generally speaking, I enjoy the multiplayer. If they did anything wrong, there's not enough game type variety. Like Warzone, you have two versions of it, and that's it. And I like Warzone a lot, but the fact that it's very static at the end of the day. It's very static, especially when it comes to your AI enemies. The most recent Warzone map was a step in the right direction, but they need to keep going. And then of course when you get into Arena, there's I think 5 or 6 basic game types at this point. Don't quote me on that, obviously. And there's not a whole lot of map variety. Well, I guess there's probably 7 or 8, but whatever. There's not a whole lot of map variety, generally speaking. It's definitely going up. They're getting there. But I think there's a lot of things. At the very least, they should have had more game type variety at launch, and even more than we currently have now, which is still pretty stagnant. Is even compared to something like Halo 4, which people criticized the hell out of for having a lack of game type variety.
All right. So, what do you believe 343 should do to benefit Halo?
Well, for one thing, I think their idea of doing free DLC with cosmetics sold through optional microtransactions, that's a good way to do it, especially with the rising cost of game development now. The big thing for the next main entry Halo title, I think they should take 4 years. Another year clearly would have done Halo 5 immense good, and I think even like an established studio like Bungie would have with something as ambitious as this would have needed that extra year more. Not this what we've come to see as the standard 3-year development cycle. Like even Call of Duty now, I believe they're I might be wrong about this, but last I heard they were stepping away from their yearly release model because it's taking longer and it takes more resources to develop these games. So I think Halo should do the same.
Now, do you believe that one of the reasons why these Halo games are kind of like not completed fully is because they're kind of pressured by the people that own them, such as Microsoft?
It's definitely possible. This is a great piece of reading. There's a book out there called The Halo Effect, and it's this collection of papers and stories. I say story, but whatever. Anyway, it's a collection of papers and stories about Halo, and there's a great one in there specifically about the development of Halo 2 and the absolute hell that Microsoft put Bungie through on that. And there's some good people over at Microsoft Game Studios. Phil Spencer is much better than the former head over there, Don Matrick, because he genuinely feels like a gamer. But at the end of the day, they're a business, and I'm sure that they're going to push their subsidiaries like 343 to complete things on time and on budget, rather than ahead of delivering the best experience possible.
So we're going to kind of digress back to your YouTube channel.
Yep.
What kind of future plans do you have for your channel? Any new series or anything special?
Well, after this Halo 5 breakdown series is finished, the next thing I want to talk about is the assembly from Halo Reach. Actually, funny enough, it's something that's been requested very recently and for a long time coming, and it potentially could have a huge impact on the story going forward, because you have this group of AI that's guided humanity since I believe the 23rd century I think the 24th century, the 2300s. But anyway, so I mean, and now you have the created storyline going on in the modern day. Shut up, phone. So I mean, that is a great idea. That is a great topic to talk about. One I'm very excited to talk about, and it's an opportunity I really hope 343 jumps on. Other than that, the other thing I'm looking forward to are what I'm currently calling flashback reviews. First of which will be Fall of Reach. It's something that's been demanded a long time. It's one I really like to do because I generally like doing reviews, and I like talking about the old stuff, the older stuff. There's a lot of awesome stuff to talk about, be it the story itself or the creation behind it. Like Fall of Reach, just to go with that, there is so much that went on behind the scenes with that book that's just so much fun to talk about. It's a miracle that it turned out as good as it did.
All right, and for one of the near-end questions, have there been any YouTubers in the community that you've kind of collaborated or have supported you?
Yeah. The only one I've directly God, I cannot speak. The only one I've directly collaborated with was Hidden Xperia, which we did a 2-parter series on the history of the Arbiter prior to Halo 5's release. So he did like part 1 up through Halo 2, and then I covered Halo 3 and onward, which was a lot of fun. Other than that, most of the closest I could say to actual collaborations were I've invited a lot of YouTubers onto my Let's Lore series just to have fun and talk with. A buddy of mine did a podcast called Chatternet, I believe, called the Chatternet, obviously named after the network from the Halo universe. I don't know if he still does that, but I did a couple discussions with him back when about the time Halo 5 came out. So and I'm sure I've done others, but I can't remember. So.
When did you first start seeing your channel kind of take off and boom?
Probably, like I mentioned earlier that I'd kind of taken a hiatus after Halo 4 came out, and then came back some months later. it was really about then that it really started to kind of take off, because I keep bringing this up, but it's my most popular video. It's the Fall of Reach timeline, and after that, just kind of it seemed to grab people's attention and kind of get them towards me.
All right. So, for the YouTube Halo community in general, what is your opinion on some of the YouTubers? There have been drama spewing around, especially with Halo Follower and some of the smaller YouTubers as well. Yeah. So, what is your opinion on some of the drama that's been going on?
Well, I hate it when drama comes up because drama sucks, I guess. I usually try to stay out of it unless I have a strong opinion on the matter, which generally I don't. Like the closest thing I've had to a strong opinion on it was the whole Halo follower not paying his contributors properly or whatever it was. I believe that's what the issue was, but it's been a while and my memory is absolute shite. So like that was the closest thing, but I generally don't comment it on my channel because I don't want to bring any of that. It's like as terrible as it is that it happened to any of those people, and I'm glad that they were able to move on to stuff like Ultimate Halo. You know, I don't want, there's an inherent toxicity there that I don't want to bring over to my channel directly. So I like to I'll comment on it happily, but beyond that, I don't like to directly bring it up on my own channel. It's like the same reason I never really said anything about Halo X, and that's a more complicated issue because I'm not sure how much I buy into everything that was said around that. So,
all right. So another question, one of the last questions is, what does it take to make a video on your channel? Like the research, the editing, and what do you kind of use, and what does it take for you to make it?
Generally, it's going to usually depend on the specific video. Like something like I did recently like an intel guide and a special weapons guide for Halo 5. Those were very easy because I just kind of copied some information out of the game guides and the rec descriptions, and you know, it's very simple work. Whereas something like a book, you know, I have to write this huge summary, and that often goes through like half a dozen revisions. You know, it'll start out way too long. I got to shorten it up, remove non-essential details, and then with the most recent format where I try to find something visually going on, I have these little avatars to show which characters are participating in a certain scene to kind of make it more visually interesting to watch than just my voice with an image of the book, you know, or a Spartan bobbing his head up and down. So I generally try to like go to Halopedia and double check everything I'm talking about. Or if I can't go to at the very least, I'll use Halopedia as a brief reference so I can find out, okay, where was this in the book, in whatever book or whatever comic. So I do my best to try and research everything as in depth as I can. But even then, I still make mistakes.
All right. So before my actual last question, what kind of advice do you have for anyone that wants to start making YouTube videos or even canon videos or lore videos about Halo?
For anyone that wants to do it, just do it. If you really have a passion for it, just do it. Yeah, follow Shia LaBeouf's advice.
Let your dreams come true.
Make your dreams a reality. And it's like just going on my own experience, I wanted to do it for so many years before I actually started, and I don't know whatever stopped me from doing it because it was the passion I had for the longest time. You know, it wasn't like I didn't have the resources to go out and get what I needed to do it. It's just, I think I like a sense of apathy essentially. So don't let apathy, be the reason you don't do something. Because I'll tell you, even if it's something as small as a YouTube channel, that'll eat at you in the real world too. I was apathetic about doing something I absolutely love. So what do you think I was like with stuff that I didn't want to do? So I wish I had better advice for people, but don't worry about the quality of the overall quality, as long as you yourself are passionate about what you're talking about. That's what matters at the end of the day. Everything else will come later.
All right. I believe that is all the questions that we have for this interview. Is there anything you would like to say to the viewers?
Live long and play Halo. Why not?
All right. I'd like to thank you again, Ian, for coming on this interview today. I'm
Thank you
sure,
for having me.
definitely, I'm sure many people will enjoy. If anyone has any comments or anything, you guys can leave it down below. I'm not sure. You might check it, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, definitely.
All
I
right.
love talking to people, so
Definitely. So thank you once again for joining me on this interview. If you guys enjoyed, then yeah, I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye.